The Mario Kart franchise has always had incredible music, and with the recent release of Mario Kart World, the bar has just been set even higher. Music has an undeniable impact on the gaming experience, and has the power to influence your emotions in a way that truly enhances what's happening on the screen. Today, I'll be sharing with you 5 reasons why Mario Kart World's soundtrack has become an instant classic for me, and is not only one of the greatest video game soundtracks to ever exist, but could very well be among the greatest soundtracks of all time, period. It might sound like a bold claim, but if you're on the fence, I hope to convince you of the sheer beauty and power that this OST offers, and have you clicking away with a greater appreciation of this music. If at any point you want to dive deeper into the composing style of Nintendo and how to produce this sort of music yourself, I've included a link to a cheat sheet below in the description that you can grab absolutely free as an actionable guide to help you create beautiful music with that Mario twist. Alright, without further ado, let's get into it. The first reason that Mario Kart World's soundtrack is among the best lies in its incredible musical material itself. This is typically comprised of melody and harmony, both of which work together to create a satisfying listening experience. Beginning with melody, it's very rare to come across anyone with a touch of Mario Kart experience who can't hum one of the track themes from memory. The melodies are crafted in a way that make them incredibly memorable, where you can listen to them on repeat without getting tired of them. Nintendo's composers know exactly what they're doing when writing these themes, whether it's adding dissonance in an otherwise diatonic melody, sprinkling in large intervallic leaps for more excitement, or adding syncopation to keep you on your toes. These themes are often always sticky earworms that may get annoying unless you listen to the next piece in the soundtrack. Let's take a look at one of my favorites, the theme from Crown City. Right off the bat, the melody kicks off with a series of ascending 16th notes with a few of them syncopated, followed by a descent back to the starting note. This rhythm immediately gives us a jazzy feeling, but what really makes this melody soar is when this melody repeats. It begins the same way, but instead rises in the second half for variety and added intensity. The leaps of a 5th and 6th create more emotion in the melody as we hit its peak, and it's incredibly satisfying as the synth lead adds a little bit of vibrato on the last note. This is just a small example of how Nintendo incorporates multiple techniques to create melodies that sound fun, lively, and bouncy. Mario Kart World also contains some of the most adventurous and incredible harmony I've ever heard in a video game, and that's in large part due to the jazz fusion influences in many of the tracks. In the new Nitro courses, these pieces often make use of modes, such as the Mixolydian mode in Whistle Stop Summit for a more exotic touch, while others incorporate chromaticism, altered extensions, modal mixture, secondary dominance, and reharmonization to create an indescribable feeling of elation, wonder, and freshness. Nothing illustrates this better than the remakes of themes from older games. For example, if we take a listen to the original DS Mario Circuit theme intro, we hear an E major and F major chord to start, followed by an ascending chromatic bass line that steps up into the theme. In World's remake, however, the chords are completely changed. The first 2 chords now become an A over B and an A flat 13, while the following bass line now descends to land on an A augmented triad over E flat. How cool is that? We end up hearing the same theme but all under a new bed of fresh harmony that gives it new life. All in all, many of the gorgeous harmonies in Mario Kart World recontextualize classic melodies in a new coat of paint, while presenting new original melodies in a bright, vibrant way that define the modern sound of Mario Kart. The second thing that makes this soundtrack so good is the sheer variety of styles and genres on hand. Whereas Mario Kart 8 leaned into jazz fusion, Mario Kart World takes things up another notch and brings in additional world, no pun intended, influences that often reflect the settings of each racetrack, such as Western and Celtic elements including the harmonica, banjo, and even whistling. Mario Kart World also leans into the Latin and lounge vibes much more this time around, featuring sparse arrangements of rhythm section and the occasional horn solo for a more relaxed listening experience. Nintendo is never shy about their orchestral arrangements either. They may add a more subtle, organic feel to your races or a more bombastic cinematic flair. Take the remake of Daisy Hills, for example. It almost sounds like a royal Disney princess entering the race. They also venture into more unexpected territory. You'd never expect dubstep in a million years in Mario Kart, but Baby Park delivers in spades. Ultimately, whether it's rock, metal, big band, orchestral, electronic, or influences from various cultures around the world, each piece of music fits the corresponding racetrack so well and is another sign of how much care Nintendo places in their soundtrack. Thirdly, many of the courses in Mario Kart World feature adaptive or dynamic music. In other words, where you are in the racetrack influences the music playing at any given moment. This is very common in platformers and open-world games where a character can explore the environment however they choose. However, in the context of a race, it can really increase the momentum and intensity of the playing experience as you near the finish line. Let's take DK Spaceport as a perfect example. When you first drive into the course, you hear the course's main theme performed by the trombone, followed by synth and sax, and the rest of the band then joins in. As you make the turn into oncoming barrel traffic, you hear the iconic riff from the original game over and over, accompanied by synth chords to fill up the mid-range. There's essentially no melody here, creating suspense and almost a sense of concentration so you can really focus on navigating around the barrels without getting knocked over. As you round the next turn, with barrels rolling side to side, the piano begins soloing over the riff and drums, adding a touch more intensity and spice. Following this, the next section is filled with one of Mario Kart World's newest features, rail grinding. Here, you have multiple rails that you can grind on and jump between, which is accompanied by an even groovier drum pattern with the brass taking over the melody for even more juice. As if it couldn't get any better, when you make the next bend, you're presented with another new mechanic of the game, wall riding. Here, the lead guitar goes crazy, soloing all over the place while the iconic bass riff continues. And finally, as you make the final bend and face the mechanical DK throwing barrels at you, the tempo increases dramatically and the band plays a repeated riff that continues until you cross the finish line. It's such a clever way to build musical anticipation that perfectly encapsulates and accompanies the increasing frantic nature and difficulty of the track, immersing you in the gameplay and building suspense to the very end. The fourth reason the soundtrack is absolutely incredible is because it expands beyond the Mario Kart universe. In fact, you can think of this OST as a treasure trove of originals and remakes from all across the Mario landscape, as well as other complementary franchises. These include Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Land, Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Galaxies 1 and 2, Super Mario 3D World and Super Mario Odyssey, Mario Paint, Wario Land and WarioWare, Donkey Kong Country, and even Yoshi's Story. The best part is that many of these other games don't necessarily show up as racetracks inspired by said games, but rather play during the intermissions in between races of your Grand Prix or in free roam. This goes to show that Nintendo's love for the music extends beyond the game you're currently playing in the moment. The numerous callbacks to other titles evokes nostalgia and fond memories, presented through reimagined arrangements which come out to over 200 pieces in total. You may be thinking, well, surely it's quantity over quality, when in fact, all of these pieces were carefully handpicked by Nintendo and often sound way better than their original counterparts. Of course, I'm not the biggest fan of every remake, but the sheer amount of great music that I just hear is an absolute pleasure. The fifth and final reason why Mario Kart World's soundtrack is among my favorites has to come down to the live performances and synergy among all the players. Any semi-professional band can perform charts decently well, but when you have absolute bangers with incredible arrangements to record, the tightness, energy, and firepower that comes sizzling through in these big band and jazz fusion performances is a blessing to the ears. Previous games could get away with MIDI mockups and cheaper samples, but Mario Kart 8 set the bar so incredibly high that World had no choice but to top that with its own soundtrack, and they absolutely delivered. That's not to say that they strayed entirely from the electronics though. As we discussed earlier, there are EDM, house, rave, techno, and dubstep tracks among the catalog that add some wonderful variety, but I personally get the most excited hearing those searing high trumpets, trombone soli, and sax licks jamming away while the rhythm section lays that strong foundation. Not to mention, the rhythm section themselves have plenty of solos as well. From distorted lead guitars to tinkling pianos, we're spoiled with the very best Japanese musicianship has to offer. So those are just a few reasons why I absolutely adore the soundtrack of Mario Kart World. The level of musicianship, craftsmanship, and energy within each piece results in a musical collection with barely any missteps, and takes risks in reimagining classic tunes that often pay off. Not only does each piece contain sticky hooks and rich harmonies, but they're always so appropriate to the setting you find yourself in, whether it be an intense race to the finish line or a relaxing intermission. It could take you years of listening through the soundtrack before you get tired of it, and even then, you'll likely discover or even rediscover subtle details within the arrangements you hadn't noticed before. At the end of the day, Mario Kart World's soundtrack is a celebration of Mario as a whole, and contains a cohesive vibe from start to finish. It's exciting, rewarding, and leaves you wanting more, which is ultimately what all great music should do. Like many others, I wish there was a dedicated music player or radio in Mario Kart World that lets you simply pick your own tunes to relax and listen to, maybe in an update or DLC down the line. If you want to dive a little deeper with me and understand the actual theory and structure behind these tunes, I'd invite you to grab my cheat sheet down below in the description covering exactly what makes Mario's music so memorable and magical. It's absolutely free and a gift for spending a few of your valuable minutes with me today. Now I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this soundtrack as much as I do, I'd love for you to share your top 3 pieces from the soundtrack and let me know down below what makes them your favorites. However, if you disagree and think the soundtrack is overrated or even downright awful, you gotta justify it down below in the comments. Either way, let me know your thoughts on the soundtrack. Thanks again for watching, and if you want to see my initial reaction to the soundtrack when listening to it for the very first time, I'll leave it right there for you to check out at your own convenience. I'll catch you in the next one.